Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Mite No podcast, episode 19. We're almost at episode 20, I think. And I'm here with my lovely co host as always. Say hi, Rudy.
Oh,
That's our Rudy.
no.
So, today is going to be us covering episodes 91 through 95, which is very exciting. Let's dive right into episode 91. We are wrapping up the Drum Island arc. We get a little bit of the repeat with Dr. Kureha, once again calling Chopper her stupid son, which I love. We see the sakura blossom snow falling down around the ship as the rest of the crew is sort of partying, and Chopper's having a bit of a solemn farewell. And we just get this beautiful welcome party for Chopper on the ship, which is really great. I love it. Um, it's just a really good scene of all the strats together. We see Vivi anxiously taking care of Karoo, who's been frozen solid from diving into the river. And this is where we discover that Chopper has a superpower. Because Karoo tells Chopper that Zoro had dove into the river and didn't come up again. So Karoo, thinking Zoro was in danger, dove in after him. And that's why he ended up
Really?
getting frozen. And we discover that Chopper can speak with animals. And as you'll recall, because this is kind of important, earlier in this show, in the filler arc, there was a little girl who ate a devil fruit that let her talk to animals. Um, from
Do you
the
know something? Do you know something strange I found out about
sure,
Karoo recently?
sure,
Apparently, Karoo has teeth.
yeah, they everything in One Piece has teeth.
I don't know why, but I never would have imagined it.
Yeah, we're gonna see a seagull in like the next episode that also has teeth, or this episode. Um, what there is a huge seagull that like bites onto Luffy's head and it just has teeth, and I'm like, why does this have teeth? Um, but we have this beautiful moment with Zoro and everything, and we find out about Chopper's superpower, which is great. Um so this is a really great moment where Nami is complimenting Chopper as they're all welcoming Chopper into the crew, and he does Chopper shtick where he's like, "Ah, oh, you idiot, saying that won't make me happy," while he looks incredibly pleased. And of course all the boys do the same shtick where they're like, "He sure looks happy." And this is a great thing where we discover that Nami is the only one who is aware that Chopper is a doctor, because none of the other people know that. And she looks at like Luffy and Sanji. She's like, "Well, why did you think we were bringing him along?" And I love their responses. Because Luffy just goes seven form transforming interesting reindeer. He's just like, I don't know, he's weird. I like that. And Sanji goes emergency food. So you heard it here first. Chopper is the Paimon of One Piece, or Paimon is the Tony Tony Chopper of Genshin Impact. Um, whichever way that goes. So we get this beautiful scene where Chopper is like, they all know now he's a skilled doctor, and they're all like giving him mad respect for that. And then in a panic, he's like, "Oh no, I forgot all my doctor tools at the castle because we had to leave in such a hurry with Correa chasing us." And Nami pulls out his little backpack and is like, "Well, what's this then?" And he's like, "My bag with all my tools." And she's like, "Didn't you put that in the sleigh because we were leaving?" And he's like, "No." And then they all take a moment and think, and they all realize that Dr. Correa put it in the sleigh for him, knowing that he was going to leave with them because she's very smart, which is great. Um, and then we see Chopper joining in on the shtick with the chopsticks in his nose. With the party, which is a thing we'll always see Chopper do at parties now. Now that Luffy has infected him with this idea that putting chopsticks in his nose is a funny joke. Get ready for that to be like Chopper's thing in the background at parties, because all the characters like do their own things at parties. Sanji's always cooking or flirting with women. Zoro is always drinking or doing arm wrestling. Luffy's eating and choking. That's his whole thing. And Usopp is in the back singing tales of his glory. And Chopper's always dancing with chopsticks in his nose. Um, Nami sits with him for a little while and they have a little talk. And Nami is just really good with kids. And Chopper is a kid. Because again, at this point in the story, Chopper is like 14 years old, 12 years old. Like, Chopper is a kid. Um, they just adopted both a pet and a child at the same time. Um, we cut back to Kureha, who's up on top of the castle with Dalton, and they're talking about the crew leaving. Um, and they have this really cute moment um, between them where Dalton's being an idiot and talking about how he was thinking about leaving the island um, because he still feels guilty for having been a part of Wapple's regime at some point. But then he gets over being an idiot, which I like, and says, "No, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to dedicate my life to making a new country here with these people and making it better. And that will be my atonement," which is great. And he talks about like Doctorine is like, "Oh, so you do have a heart for this country," and he talks about how he first saw this like 10 years ago or whatever, and we get a flashback to um, one of the world summits. So it hasn't been discussed too much in One Piece, but this will become important later. So we'll just go over it very quickly now. Once every 4 years, the kings of the different kingdoms around the world government all come to the Holy Land of the world nobles. And they have basically a huge conference where they decide alliances and end wars and start wars and all come together to figure out what they're going to do for the next 4 years. Um, and basically, at one of these events with Wapple, Dalton was there. And at this event, we get to see Vivi's daddy, whose name is Cobra. And we see Cobra is this wise and respected man with a large, imposing figure compared to Wapple, who is Wapple. And basically, at this meeting, they are talking about uh, Dragon, the person we saw at Rogue Town with Smoker and Luffy, the one who held Smoker back, so Luffy could run away. This dragon figure, and how serious a threat he's going to be, and he's going to cause all these revolutions to spark up and overthrow kingdoms. And Wapple pays it off because he controls his island with an iron fist, and he doesn't believe the people will ever revolt because they'll just die without doctors. And Cobra, of course, yells him down for being a petulant child, which Wapple takes like a little bitch. Um, so after this, while Wapoli's leaving, they see Cobra walking away and he gets a little pissy. And then he spots Cobra's daughter, a little young Vivi with Igaram. And he basically walks over and hits this child in the head and pretends he just bumped into her. But this grown ass man just walked over to like a 10-year-old and hit her in the head because her father is a better man than he is. Um, and Igaram is about to start a fucking war because uh this asshole just hit Vivi, which is a no-no to do in front of Igaram. But Vivi, of course, understanding that this is an important man from another kingdom, and if they get into a war, the lives of many soldiers might be lost over something so stupid as him taking out his anger on her, she, stiffens up that upper lips and tells Igaram to calm down and apologizes for bumping into Wapple. It must have been her fault. And Wapple, of course, can't handle someone being the bigger man than he is, especially when it's a little girl. So he leaves in a huff, calling her like a stupid word. And Dalton like looks at Igaram, and they both have like the same look in their eyes. And Dalton's just like Summon, which I fucking love. I just love when old men in Japan say their sorry like that so much. I just love that line, just like Summon. And then we cut away where Igaram has taken Vivi away from the crowds, and she's crying because this grown ass man just hit her in the head. And we see that Dalton is nearby watching this, where this little girl put on that strong upper face and then is, of course, crying because she's a little fucking girl, but who had the political and social nuance to not cause a scene that could cause problems between the kingdoms. And he's just like, this little girl is better than like anyone involved with Wapple, including me. Um, which is great. So we cut back from this flashback, which is good, and a man shows up um with Dalton and says he forgot to tell him, but a wanderer came to the city 10 days ago, roughly, or 2 weeks ago or a week ago, I think it was. And he said that there was a man who came to the island, and when he came to the island, it was a weird day because it didn't snow that day, which is weird because it always snows in Drum. Um, and the man said he was looking for Blackbeard, which we know is the name of the pirate who attacked Drum, which is why Walpole fled with all the army and all the doctors and everything. But he showed up late. Blackbeard had already come, attacked Drum, and then left. Um, and then he brings up that this man was looking for Luffy, and he has the bounty there, which is great because that's when they realize Luffy has a bounty of 30 million berries. And he's like, holy shit. That little kid? Oh, God. However, uh, apparently this man left a message with this guy to tell Luffy that he will wait in Alabasta for 10 days. And the man asks him his name. And the man says his name is Ace. And that Luffy will know who that is. So this is it. This is our first appearance of Ace, and personally my favorite outfit of his with the long black winter coat. I honestly wish that was his normal outfit always. I am a sucker for a long black coat. I love it. His design looks great. And then, of course, a cook comes in and is like, hey, that guy didn't eat pay for his bill. And Ace runs off, which is very Ace, as we'll find out over the course of the show. So Doctorine takes a look at the wanted poster, and now she realizes something even more than Dalton realizes. They both realize that Luffy is a big bounty, which is impressive. But what she realizes is that his name is Monkey D. Luffy. And she brings up something called the Will of D and how it's continuing on, and how her son has really gotten involved with a really important person or an amazing person, she says. Uh, which is great. Um,
I don't know why I did not notice that before.
it's
That relevant.
extremely relevant. um, it's a very important line, and this might be our first instance of a character name dropping the Will of D, which will become a huge thing in One Piece. Um, but Kureha is like the only character who we've met so far, I think, who has actually said something about Luffy's middle initial being the letter D. Um, this will be important. So take notes for later, kids. We cut back to the ship. They see like Chopper is just amazed by everything because again he's only ever lived on Drum. He's never sailed before. He's never left his island. This huge rock flies over their ship like this massive bird. Um, Luffy, calls down to it. It flies. It bites him. It flies up. Chopper freaks out. Yada yada yada. Luffy uses Gum Gum propeller to crash the bird into the ship. The bird has a lot of teeth for some reason. Um, and then basically we get a whole bunch of exposition dumping because Chopper doesn't understand what's going on. He doesn't know why they're sailing, where they're going, or why. So he ends up getting filled in about Crocodile and the situation with Alabasta, and we get this really great moment where Chopper like asks a question, and Luffy's like, "We just need to go beat up this Crocodile guy," and I want to just focus on that because it is a lot of foreshadowing and not in the way we might suspect. It's not just, oh, Luffy is gonna fight this guy and he's gonna beat him up. It is that. It's One Piece. That's probably gonna happen. But that's not what this is foreshadowing, and Oda is a fucking little genius of a bastard when he comes to writing sometimes, and I really appreciate it. Um, so then we get some exposition about Baroque works, because again, Chopper doesn't know anything about Baroque works. So we get a rundown of Mr. Zero and his partner, the five officers and their partners, except for Mr. Two, who doesn't have a partner. Um, and while she's doing all this, she says a line, which is why I think most people thought Miss Golden Week has a devil fruit. She says, the officers all have the power of devil fruits.
But then when they said officers, I thought it was just the numbers.
Well, see, that's the thing, right? I think that's what she means. But most of the women partners in the officers, except Miss Golden Week, have devil fruits. Literally all of them do, except her. But the way when she says the officers, it does refer to the men of the half. And she says each officer has a partner. The women aren't considered officer rank, the men are. It's weird. but it's just a weird like language thing that when I first watched the show, I assumed it just meant all of them. All 9 of them have devil fruits. But no, one of them doesn't. It's weird. So then we get Luffy interrupting this exposition again, saying we just need to go beat up this crocodile raid, and everyone's like, "Eh, quiet, quiet, Luffy. You know she's talking." Um, and then there's a little bit more talking, and Luffy a third time in like 5 minutes says the line, "We just have to go beat up this crocodile guy, right?" And I just want to really point out that Oda doesn't do things in threes unless they're really important. So keep that in mind, audience and Rudy, who again has never seen these episodes before. We cut away from this to de, Mr. Bon Clay, Bon Clay Sama, Mr. Two being great. And basically, he has sailed his way to Little Garden and is currently beating up one of his men. Uh, because his navigator, because they were supposed to make a straight line to Little Garden and kill Mr. Three along the way for failing Crocodile. Because again, Crocodile thinks Mr. Three lied to him over the Dendemushi when it was actually Sanji. Because Sanji says they took care of the Straw Hats and then the Unlucky shows up and he kills them. And then he's like, "Oh, sorry, one of the Straw Hats got back up. I guess they weren't dead." And Crocodile was like, "What? So you lied to me?" So Mr. Two was sent to kill Mr. Three, but they didn't run into Mr. Three because the Straw Hats already dealt with him. And then we cut away to Crocodile and Miss All Sunday, whose name again in show we don't know is Robin yet. Um, and we
But then
see
if you've gone on the internet at all, you know it's Nico Robin.
yes, yes, but we have to for the sake of the show not do that. Um, so we get to hear her talk to Crocodile saying that there are pirates attacking a village. Are you going to go deal with it? And he's like, of course. After all, I'm a hero of the people. I have to maintain my image and earn more goodwill. And oh my god, listen, I don't really get into like voice actors. Like I don't know the name of the voice actor for Crocodile or Smoker, but fuck, they have a voice that just does things to me.
Search it up, man. Search it up. Search it up.
I'm not going to,
Search it.
but
Why?
because I'm really lazy. However,
Search it up.
I've since discovered that Crocodile's voice actor is the same voice actor as Zabuza from Naruto, who also gives me the big boners. Uh and has always been like my man crush in Naruto, like always. So, so I just have a thing for this actor's voice specifically. Um and
Okay,
that's
I'll search it up for you then.
that's the end of that episode. Did you have anything you wanted to add to episode 91? It was a lot of exposition and rehashing things we already kind of knew for Chopper, mixed in with some new reveals about Vivi when she was young, and we actually get to see her father for the first time and a bunch of stuff. A ton of stuff happened, but nothing happened at the same time. We're in a weird block of episodes where there's going to be a ton of exposition, but not a lot of action. Sorry, I suddenly have the hiccups.
There's one thing I have to say about what you said there. The amount of times you said the letter D, I was trying to hold back from saying a D's nuts joke. I'm gonna be honest.
Well, you're gonna have to get used to it because the letter D is like supremely relevant to this fucking show. And each character who has the D is incredibly important.
I think it takes out of context so easily.
Yeah, Oda definitely had a lot of fun with that. I'm sure it was definitely on purpose as well.
Also, you said you wanted to know the voice actor of Crocodile.
No, but sure, go ahead.
Well, no, okay, no, you didn't, but I found it anyway.
Okay.
It is Ryuza Budo Otomo.
That's a good name.
I'll type it because I probably just about passed on trying to pronounce that.
Well, I won't be able to check that right now, or else I'll lose your image in the
No,
video.
I'm, yeah.
But I'll look at that later. Let's move on to episode 292, our second episode of the day. So we open episode 92 with Crocodile showing up like a goddamn Jesus figure to this village that's under attack by pirates. Um, Before the local military, we get snippets of the military chasing their way to the city, but he gets there first. Because of course he does. As we're about to discover, Crocodile is fighting in his ultimate element, basically. Um, I like that he plays Sundere with the crowd. Like he actually like kind of talks down to them like they're idiots, and they just get off on it. Um, like they're calling him all these heroic titles and everything, and he's just fucking loving it. He's getting so fucking hard. He's just loving these idiots praising him when he's secretly trying to, you know, overthrow their king and take control of their country, and has like instigated a rebellion leading to the deaths of thousands of their friends. And he's just like, yes, praise me more. His dick's rock hard. He's such a fucking pervert. I love him. Um, so he jumps down to attack the pirates. They all stab him from every direction, and he just looks bored. He raises his hand to the air. Sorry, not his hand, his hook. Now, this is very important, Rudy. I don't know if we've talked about this before, but Rudy, I want you to close your eyes for a moment, okay? Close your eyes for me. When I say think of a pirate, what image comes into your head?
Straight up, straight up book from Peter Pan.
Exactly. So, this is a very important thing about One Piece. When we close our eyes as people who've consumed pirate media all of our lives, we get very specific images in our head. We see the peg-legged Long John Silver from Muppets Treasure Island or whatever, like Treasure Island. We get Hook from Peter Pan. There are very specific different pirate archetypes that are sort of a general part of our lexicon as people who consume media. And Oda very specifically avoids those tropes throughout most of One Piece. He saves those tropes for very important characters. Up until this point, we have not seen a pirate with a hook for their hand. But when I say think of a pirate, you think of a man who has an amputated hand and wears a hook. Odo saved that for Crocodile to really hammer home that this guy is serious. And it's just a lovely thing that Oda does with the pirate trope. Basically, if you ever see someone who looks a little more piratey than he should because of one of these weird physical tropes sticking out, pay attention to him. He's probably important. So he raises his hook into the air and yells for everyone who doesn't want to die to hit the ground. So all the civilians go prone on the ground. And he summons a massive sandstorm that sucks the moisture out of all the men. All the fat, all of their muscle just drains all the liquid out of them. He lowers his hook to the ground, and the whole pirate crew is dead. Like they are fucking corpses. Like Oda in this part of this arc is killing people. As we'll see later in like 2 episodes. So Crocodile picks up all the bags that the pirates had brought with them, throws it over his shoulder, and just walks away because cool guys don't look at mass murder uh, instead of explosions. And the civilians raise up
Okay,
and just begin chanting his name. What was that, Rudy? Sorry?
sorry. You literally said because cool guys don't look at mass.
Yes,
What?
well, because the phrase is cool guys don't look at explosions.
Yeah.
But there was no explosion here. It was just mass murder. So he just walked away from it coolly. Um so of course the military shows up and they see that all the pirates are dead and there's just this crowd of people yelling Crocodile's name, cheering him, literally calling him the king of the sands, which is a little treasonous when you have a king. Like they're being a little treasonous here with their near worship of this pirate, which I find very interesting.
And then the
So
king, and then the king's like, uh, well, he's not really doing us any harm. He's kind of saving us from pirates. Who cares?
That's an
But if we're at,
interesting take, Rudy. That's very interesting because I'm pretty
that's not
sure
that's the vibe I got from it anyway.
I get something a little different from it. So the military heads back to the king towards Cobra, Vivi's father, who looks a bit older than the flashback. Um, and they're like, he got here before us. We're sorry, we couldn't do it. And there's just this beautiful moment where Cobra does say, well, at least our people were saved. That's what he says. So here's the thing. Cobra knows that he's in a bad situation. Again, 300,000 soldiers from his army just left to join the rebels, which is crazy. I don't know why this country needs to employ like 100,000 soldiers. Like, the country is not that big. They can't have that high of a population. Ignore the numbers for this arc. Oda doesn't understand like humans. Like, he just doesn't understand people and like math. Um so this really pisses Cobra off. It doesn't piss him off that his people are safe. He genuinely feels that, like, well, Crocodile got there, he saved them, that's all that mattered, the people are safe. But he needed the win. And this is a thing where Crocodile showing up before them, always being one step ahead, is actively fucking him over because the people are treating him like a king. But Cobra is
Well,
the
you
king. He
explained it
doesn't
like
have
that.
he doesn't have the faith of his people because of Cobra or because of Crocodile. And Crocodile is doing this on purpose to undermine Cobra. That's why he showed up before the army, and it's why he showed up just before the army.
Like yeah,
Crocodile
the way
timed this shit on purpose for maximum embarrassment. I guarantee it.
yeah, the way you're explaining it now makes me see it completely differently.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah, okay, yeah, I can see that.
it's real good. And like Cobra legitimately is happy that his people are safe, but boy, does he wish he was the one who did it. So we cut away from Cobra and Crocodile and all this fun shit, to see Luffy, who's getting scolded by Sanji because he apparently him, Karoo, Chopper, and Usopp broke into the fridge in the middle of the night and ate all their food, uh, which Sanji had very carefully laid out for them. Um, and they're just a bunch of idiots. And he brings up the locked fridge, which I love that this is like one of Sanji's dreams now is just to have a lock on the fridge, which I believe he gets eventually. Um, so we cut away. A little bit of time has passed. Everyone's very hungry because again they ate all the food. And Luffy and Usopp are fishing, and they're using Karoo as bait, which is some good funny shtick. Um, and they end up talking. I forget about the exact thing, but they end up talking about something and like a number of thousands of years. Oh, okay, I remember now. So they see a hotspot in the water, basically an area where there's a volcano beneath the water, and its heat and everything is bubbling up sulfurous fumes, basically. And Nami goes on this talk how in thousands of years from now, there will be a new island here, in theory, from all this volcanic activity. And Luffy has this beautiful moment. It's just a little cute moment with Luffy and Usopp, but I loved it. Where Luffy's like, in his old man voice, he's like, thousands of years. I wonder if I'll still be alive to see it. And Usopp says this absolute killer of a line where he says, you should try dying before that. Which I fucking lost it. I found that so funny. It was good shtick. We find out that the volcanic fumes are all sulfuric and it smells like rotten eggs, because of course it does. Um, so as they enter, a few minutes pass, and then we see that Mr. Two ship is entering the same hotspot. Their ship seems to be like powered by an engine or paddles or something, so it's just moving faster than the Mary. So their ship tears through the mists, and then we see their ship come out of the mist, and Mr. Two isn't on the ship anymore. Why? Because while sailing through the water, he saw Luffy and Usopp dangling Karoo over the edge and jumped onto the dock out of instinct. So they pull up Mr. Two, but of course they don't know who Mr. Two is. Um, which is fantastic. So we get introduced to Mr. Two, who is this very large, garish man dressed like a ballerina who speaks in a very effeminate voice. Um, Oda uses the word okama a lot in this part of the show, which I've never really enjoyed because when I first watched One Piece, the direct translators turned that into a slur for homosexuals, and I'm like, why would people just be calling him this? This is kind of like, that's not an okay word, translators. I would have preferred you just left the original Japanese. And the word basically kind of means that, but not with the same connotations that the slur has in the Western tongue, basically. So we meet Mister Two Bon Clay Sama, but Vivi doesn't act like she knows who this person is, though she should, and that is a joke that will happen in a bit. Um, but to thank the crew for saving him because he fell into the water and they saved him because, of course, he couldn't swim, he explains that he has a devil fruit and decides to show it to them. And he punches Luffy in the face and sends him flying. And everyone reacts like this is an enemy now. And then he's like, no, no, wait. And as he pulls his hand away, you realize he has transformed body and voice into Luffy. And everyone freaks out. And then he goes through and gently taps everyone else's face except for Vivi's and Sanji. Sanji isn't here right now. He's in the kitchen. Um and then he transforms into each one of them in turn by touching his face. And he describes that he has the power of the clone fruit. And basically, if he touches someone with his right hand, with his left hand, he can turn his body into them. All of his body, as he turns into Nami and flashes the boys with her tits, which gets him a big smack in the head from Nami. But it's kind of interesting that his fruit just lets him become an actual woman at will. Like, this devil fruit is crazy. And it's one of the strongest devil fruits possible. I honestly believe that. So he does, like, he says, oh, that's enough of my fruit. But they all cheer him on like he's the center of attention because they all love it. Or at least the three idiots do. So of course he starts doing it again, and he shows them all these weird faces that he has in his memory. Because if he's ever touched someone, he can remember their face, basically. And as he's changing it, we see him turn into Cobra Nefertiti. We see him turn into Vivi's dad. And Vivi sees him turn into her dad. And boy, does that trigger some PTSD for her in a bad way. For a good reason. Um, So at this point, as he's finishing his little dance and he's dancing with Luffy and Chopper and Usopp, and they're singing because they're friends now, the ship shows up, his ship, and he jumps over onto his ship and he starts crying and he tells them to farewell. But all great encounters in life come to these sad goodbyes, but he'll never forget them. And he sails away, and they all cry. And then the people on his ship call him Mister Two, Bon Kure sama. And everyone on Luffy's ship goes, holy shit, that was Mr. Two. um, and uh, I Mr. Two is the sixth greatest character in One Piece on my list of characters in One Piece, which might not seem like a lot, but the first two are Smoker and Crocodile, and the next three are all members of the Straw Hats. He is Mr. Two is literally my favorite person in One Piece who isn't literally the two men who get me off and the main cast. I love this character. I love the scene. I love the friendship that gets born here. I love when the scene where Vivi explains how she heard that Mr. Two was this masculine ballerina who talks in a feminine voice and whose shirt says Bon Clay on its back, and all of them are like, you should have known that was him. Even Luffy is like, what the fuck, Vivi, you dropped the ball. So now they have a big problem. Their enemy, who doesn't know they're his enemy yet, has all of their faces and bodies. And oh boy, could he do some really dastardly things with that. And even worse, Vivi tells them, he has her father's body, the king's body. Imagine what sort of terrible things you could do with the face of the king to really cause issues for him. However, Zoro sees a silver lining in all of this. Because they know about their opponent's devil fruit ahead of time, they can plan for it. And Zoro gets a really good strategic moment here. And this is when a sea cat shows up. This massive good luck sea king fish cat. And like Chopper and Usopp like get scared of it, but everyone else is like fucking food. And the cat's like, oh, they're gonna kill me. The cat immediately is like, oh, I showed up to the wrong ship. But Vivi hits them because she said sea cats are sacred in Alabasta. Because of course they are. It's just Egypt, but in One Piece. So of course, instead of worshiping actual cats, they worship sea cats. Of course. Um, so while they're sailing, they see a whole fleet of ships coming up behind them, all with the Baroque works um, typing on them, basically the symbols of Baroque's work. Because of course, Crocodile is about to move forward with his plan, so he has to summon all of his soldiers together. And we're at this point where we see them doing something with wraps on their wrists to set themselves apart, knowing that Mr. 2 won't know they're wearing those, so they'll be able to tell who each other are later because they know his devil fruit. And that's about the end of the episode. How did you like this one? How do you feel about Mr. 2 now that we finally got to see Bon Clay in action?
He is the strange one. He is quite a strange one.
That is an accurate description of Mr. 2. How did you like him flashing the boys? I always forget that he turns into Nami and then just rips his shirt open in front of like Usopp and Luffy and Chopper. That is some funny shit. And she looks genuinely embarrassed with that too, which I find very funny for her. Uh so I'm not trying to build too much expectations into it because you're your own person and you'll like Mr. 2 or you won't like Mr. 2 as the story continues. But I would say if someone sat me down and said like who were your favorite One Piece characters, it would literally go Smoker, Crocodile, Robin, Brook, Luffy, and then Mr. 2, which is like
I got it.
high
I think I
praise.
go first.
One more
I
time,
think I
Rudy.
go full.
You're
So
cutting
my
you're
hey
you're cutting out a little bit.
oh okay. Hopefully you can hear this, everyone. My four favorite One Piece characters. This is in no particular order. Probably be Vivi, Nami, Sanji, and Buggy.
I like that Buggy's that high on the list. I'm into that. You still haven't even met like a third of the cast of One Piece yet, so don't worry, that list will change. Um, there we are nowhere near even seeing anywhere close to all the characters yet. Not even all the main characters yet. I mean, we haven't even seen all the Straw Hats yet. Um, but yeah, that was episode 92. It was perfectly great. I love the shtick with Mr. 2. I love that moment of friendship that happens between him and Luffy and the gang. Um, and that will pay huge dividends as we watch the show and continue. Notable thing, Mr. 2 did not touch Vivi and never saw Sanji because Sanji comes out later uh, and finds out about Mr. 2 and everything, which is interesting. So, episode 93, um, we see Luffy eating his shoe as they pull into sight of Alabasta. And Nami tells him to try not to act too much on instincts. So he, of course, immediately jumps over the ship and runs off into the desert, demanding food. Vivi is worried that she'll be recognized, and they see that Mr. Three's ship is here. So Mr. Three did get off of Little Garden. He did make his way to Alabasta somehow. They don't know where he is yet, but they see his ship. Usopp has an idea, which is to drape all of them except for like Sanji and Chopper in a tarp and just walk around under a tarp through the center of this city while everyone watches them. And he acts like this is a great idea. Um, they get for a moment, get to a place where they're in like a ruined building. They take off the disguise, and Vivi is sitting there getting like super depressed and distracted. Um, and we get this moment where she's again failing to put faith in the crew because again she's thinking, well, you got me to Alabasta, our deal is over, and they're like, you are our friend. The deal, don't get me wrong, we're still gonna demand payment for getting you here because it's Nami and she's gonna do that, but they're not just gonna abandon her. Like it, so this is like another big foreshadowing moment where Vivi is not willing to put her burdens on her friends, and it causes a lot of problems for her. Um, which we will find out later. But this is another big moment of foreshadowing where she once again is being a little depresso espresso, as I like to write her in my notes. I literally call her the depresso espresso. Um, and she just isn't putting faith on them to help her. She's just taking all these burdens onto herself. And it's a whole thing. They snap her out of it. Nami is a little threatening. We get a really good shtick with Nami and Zoro about how the money he owes is going up. It's gone up another 100,000 berries. It's really good
We
shtick.
get that interest money.
Yeah, the interest. And she's like, it'll keep going up if you don't pay it quicker. And he just keeps getting mad. And she's like, and if I die, I'm gonna come back and haunt you as a ghost till you pay it. Her relationship with Zoro in these earlier arcs is very good. I see why people ship them so violently. Um, so they all like ask like for a moment like, "Hey, where is Luffy?" And we cut to Luffy who's just in the fucking desert. He just ran clear out of this little village and is just in the desert. He decides to turn around and head back to the village because there's probably no food out here when he spots a little hut with smoke coming out of the chimney, which he assumes means there is food cooking. So he runs there. We cut back and we see Chopper is shopping with Sanji as they are trying to get a disguises for everyone, locally themed clothing. I actually really like Zoro's outfit this arc. I don't know why. I think it makes him look like a bit of a thug, and I just kind of like that for him. Um, he's having a really hard time though because this city is famous for perfumes and his nose is so much more sensitive than a human's. It's just overwhelming. Plus, he's a fucking reindeer in the desert, which I don't know if you know this, technically tundras are deserts, but they're a little different in temperature than this kind of desert. So he's having a hard time. Sanji basically abandons him to go flirt with girls. Because again, Chopper is a kid and Sanji is not a good dad uh, or babysitter or whatever you want to call him in this situation. And Chopper's just sort of walking, and he's like, again, a doctor, so he's really aware that he's like suffering heat stroke. He's like, I am beginning to suffer heat stroke symptoms. Like, I need to get out of the heat. So he pulls his way into a wagon and just collapses down and talks himself into thinking that sleeping until Sanji finds him will be fine. Um, which I love. And he ends up going to sleep and he ends up getting kidnapped as soon as he passes out, the people whose wagon he crawled into come over and close it, looking kind of shady. We cut away from Luffy, or cut away from Chopper, sorry, to Luffy, and we see that he found these. He tried the door, there was no one there, it doesn't look like a restaurant. He's about to leave when he sees these large bags, like sacks, and he opens all of them up and is tossing them all over, and there's a green powder in them, and he tries it, and it's disgusting. And he thinks that this must be some sort of poison, like someone must have this by accident. So he throws it all into the furnace, which changes the color of the smoke and creates a large cloud. It then begins to have a torrential rain in this desert, like absolute downpour, which he tries to drink up. And the man comes out of the hut in a panic, wielding like a scimitar, yelling about something about his dance powder. Um, and basically he discovers that Luffy burned all the stuff and he gets super heartbroken because that was his dream and so expensive. And Luffy apologizes when he finds that he destroyed this man's dream. He doesn't understand it, but he knows that that is a bad thing to do, so he apologizes. Um, and the man's like, "That's not good enough. You'll have to pay me." And Luffy just says, "I don't have any money," but he says it very proudly, which pisses the guy off. Um, and Luffy like is confused, and he's like, "What, can't you just buy more?" And the man explains that no, this is like illegal. You can't just own it. So Luffy is just like, "Oh, so you're a bad guy." Because the guy just told him this thing was illegal when he clearly didn't know that. So the guy tries to jump Luffy, and you can only guess how good that's going to go. So we cut back to Chopper, who wakes up in the wagon and realizes he's basically been kidnapped. And we find out that the reason these people are being so cautious and looking so shady is they are smuggling weapons to the rebels, bought in the city by people who just run like gun shops, and they are selling them illegally to the rebels. Um, which means they're probably owned by Baroque Works, of course. Um, so in a panic, he pretends to play dead when they open the door, and they're like, because they mentioned they brought some food, and someone's like, "Holy shit, they brought a whole deer! Why did they buy this? It must have been expensive." Um, However, Chopper makes a friend. He ends up sneaking onto the back of the camel that was pulling the wagon, and the camel leads him out of the village and drops him down safely. And Chopper asks him, "Why did he help me? Why did you help me?" And the camel says in camel, "No reason." That's kind of cool, isn't it? And Chopper's like, "You're kind of weird. I like you, but you're kind of weird." And the camel heads back to Yuba or whatever it was, the village he was at. Um, and Chopper's like, "How do I even get back to the village?" And then he smells the air. He's like, "Oh, it's fucking this way," because he can still pick up the perfume. Um, so we cut back to Luffy getting a bunch of exposition, which he mostly ignores. Um, and it's just a lot of shtick between him and this guy, where this guy is trying to explain dance powder to him, and basically it goes up in the air and creates rain. So it's illegal. We don't really know why, because we're seeing this through Luffy's eyes right now, and Luffy's an idiot. And this man catches on that Luffy's an idiot and ends up being quite rude to him. And every time like Luffy hits him or goes, "You're being very rude," because Luffy is smart enough to know when someone is talking shit, even if he doesn't understand why they're talking shit. Um, so that's very good. So the guy tries to buy Luffy's silence with some food, which is great. And as he's leaving, he's like, "It's not like I could turn you in anyway. After all, I'm a pirate." And the guy's like, "Oh, that's not fair. I wouldn't have given you my food if I knew you couldn't turn me in." So Luffy runs off, as he does, which is great. Um, Sanji and Chopper
Wait,
show back up with the outfits.
wait,
Sa-
wait. Sorry.
yeah.
I was gonna say, I saw you forgot to mention the fact that Luffy just burned all of this rain powder.
Oh yeah. I mentioned that he put it in the furnace and it made the rain. He destroyed all of it. It was
Maybe my head
fantastic.
was elsewhere.
It was fantastic. So Sanji and Chopper show back up. They have the outfits. He got dancing girl outfits for Nami and Vivi, and outfits that make Zoro and Usopp look like thugs. They look like gangsters. Um, Vivi needs a bit of a chill pill. Basically, she's still being a bit of a freak. And Luffy just isn't there. Where is Luffy? Who knows? We'll find out eventually. I'm sure. Um, because he still just wanders deeper and deeper into the desert at this point. Which is fantastic. And that takes us to the end of that episode. Do you have anything?
Right?
Did you have
Oh, do I
anything?
have
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. The people that was getting weapons shipments that Chopper was in the van. Pretty shady, not gonna lie. Have a have a thought process. I think you're working for Crocodile Friends.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, just based on like I'm not gonna say based on how he looks because of his hook, but yeah.
So I don't believe the people buying the weapons work for Crocodile. I believe those are actual rebels. But hidden in the rebels are Crocodile's men to ensure that the rebels don't lose heart. Because again, he wants the war. He wants Cobra to get taken out by the rebels. He wants them to destroy each other so he can take over the country unopposed. Clearly, right? Because the rebels are now the size of the army. If they both kill each other, there won't be an army and there won't be rebels. And most of the fighting fit men in the country will be dead. He could just take over the country with his devil fruit alone at that point. Um,
Yeah.
this was a good episode. It's got a lot of craziness. I liked the shtick with Luffy and the old guy being rude to him. I'm really
Yeah.
excited for the next two episodes though.
Mm-hmm.
So let's dive into episode 94, where we open with the Straw Hats being like in a whole nother city. Like they made it to another city. Um, and they still haven't seen Luffy, and they're talking about looking for him. And there's this beautiful moment where Zoro is like, "Hey, what's that?" And we zoom in because we actually get a zoom in before this. And who is it? We see Ace, baby, walking around with no shirt on. Uh, the huge fucking white beard crest on his back. Again, I find it so bullshit that no one reacts to this man, just this known entity walking around the streets with just like
Oh,
wearing the flag of one of the strongest pirates in the world on his back, and the only person who
wait, yeah.
notices is Zoro.
It's the guy that said the One Piece is real.
It is. He hasn't said that yet, but he will. Um. So Usopp and Chopper are being dumb. Basically, we see Ace, snake oiled salesman, tries to sell a golden apple. That's really stupid. He of course doesn't buy it. He just keeps walking. Usopp and Chopper completely buy into the apple, even after they see the guy painting the apple. So that's just stupid as shit. It's just them being dumb. Um, and then we get this great moment where Zoro like senses Ace, and just by sensing his presence is like, oh, that guy is different. And then he sees the Whitebeard mark, and Zoro's like, I was a bounty hunter who hunted pirates. I know that flag. That dude is serious. However, as he's seeing this, he sees Tashigi and hides. Because of course Tashigi is here, which of course means Smoker is here. Yay! So we see Ace go to this fortune teller lady and ask her some questions. And he brings up Luffy and shows her a poster, and they all are within range to hear this. And they're like, "Why is he looking for Luffy?" And she's like, "No, but go down to that restaurant and talk to the owner. He knows a bunch of stuff." So Ace is just like, "Oh, I was getting hungry, so why not?" So he goes that way. So we get this great scene where we cut away from this for a little bit to see everyone of the Straw Hats reacting, and then we cut back to near the restaurant. Um, and there's a crowd gathering around it, and they start talking about how someone in the restaurant just died. And we get some exposition that might become relevant for some filler episodes coming out about eating a desert strawberry and how it'll kill you a few days later. Um, and we cut into the room and we see his arms still raised, holding the fork with some meat on it. Ace's head is just buried into a bowl of rice, and everyone thinks he just dropped dead. But no one can go to him because if you eat the desert strawberry and die, your body can become contagious very quickly. So everyone's like staying back, and then of course Ace lifts his head up, and comes back to life, and everyone freaks out. And this woman comes up to him and is like, "Are you okay?" And he leans over and grabs her dress and lifts it up so he can wipe his face on it, because he's a fucking piece of shit. Um, and he's like, "Ah, oh, I fell asleep," and everyone freaks out because of course he was having a conversation with someone and eating and just fell asleep. And they're like overreacting to everything he says, and he ends up falling asleep again. And they, say like, don't do that. So we cut back outside the restaurant while the shtick is happening, and Smoker sees he's got really good eye. This man sees straight into the restaurant and sees Ace, and again, Smoker Luffy, but Smoker also can't leave pirates alone because that's his personality. So of course he walks into the restaurant, because Smoker just man, he's got that eye on that D. And I believe he calls Ace by his full name here for the first time. We actually hear Ace's full name, which is Portuguese D Ace, which is notably not, Monkey D Ace. They have a different family name. Um, he asks him what he's doing here, and Ace says he's looking for his little brother. And Ace is like, "What do you want, Smoker?" And Smoker's like, to let me capture you quietly." And Ace is like, not gonna happen. Not in the cards today." Um, However, Luffy has been smelling the restaurant and running towards it at full tilt. And while this conversation is happening between Smoker and Ace, they're just big dick waving back and forth. Luffy Gum Gum rockets straight into Smoker's back, break Smoker's back. Personally, I'd prefer to see Luffy break Smoker back another way. Um, which sends Smoker into Ace and sends the pair of them through like 8 things. Um, oh my god. Hello?
For reference, Mike has completely cut out.
Am I back now? Yeah, I don't know what's up with this cord. I literally bought this headset a week ago.
When you said break his back another way, I was literally just thinking of the the rock with the eyebrow raise. Like suspicious.
I was thinking about sex.
Of course you are.
Yeah, I ship Smoker and Luffy really hard. They're like my favorite chip in One Piece. Break that back. All right, let's get back to the episode. Um, so Luffy, of course, slides immediately into the restaurant's table and just begins demanding food, and the guy just brings him a bunch of food. And we see like Ace and Smoker recovering after they got launched through all these houses, and Ace starts walking first, and he's just like, "What fucking stupid son of a bitch motherfucker would do this? Like, who the fuck has the balls?" And of course he walks into a house and he sees a family just sitting there eating, whose house he just destroyed. And again, Ace has good manners sometimes in very weird situations, so he stops and bows and apologizes for interrupting their meal, and then keeps walking. And as he's getting closer, he notices it's Luffy while Luffy is eating. Um, so he's about to call out for Luffy, and then Smoker also sees Luffy because again, Smoker has great eyes, and he like slams Ace's head to the ground and yells like "Mugiwara!" and like runs into the room, and like everyone runs away. And Luffy is just eating and eating because he can't quite place who Smoker is right away because his brain's a little slow. And then it clues in that it's Smoker, and he starts sweating profusely because Luffy knows he can't beat Smoker. Like, this is a weird situation where Luffy has an opponent he knows he can't beat, at least not at the moment. Um, and Smoker is just getting more and more pissed that Luffy isn't like dialoguing with him in any way, and Luffy's just eating. Um, so Luffy scoops up all the food, swallows it, and says thank you for the meal and runs away. And Chaser or Smoker starts chasing him. Chaser Smoker starts chasing him. At which point Ace pulls himself out of the ground when Smoker like stomped him into the dirt. And also gives chase. And of course the restaurateur is there. He's like they didn't pay for their meals. None of them paid for their meals. Um, which is funny. So we get this really cute moment where Smoker like Luffy is running. Tashiki's in front of him, and Smoker calls out for Tashiki to cut Luffy off, and she pulls out her sword and goes to swing at him. But of course, she's not gonna fucking hit him. It's Luffy, and he jumps up to the roof and keeps running. And Smoker flies up to the roof. We get to see Smoker do a lot of cool shit with his fruit in this little arc. Um, and we get this moment where like they're running on the roof and Smoker's like extending his arm to try and catch him, and then Luffy just fucking disappears, and Smoker gets to the next roof and stops. He's like, he disappeared. Oh, he's such a crafty bastard. Luffy just fell. He just missed the gap between two buildings and fell into a garbage heap and like landed on his head. And I just love that Smoker is like, oh, he's so crafty. I just fucking love that he's just misinterpreting the situation completely. So Luffy hops up and keeps running away in the opposite direction now. Smoker dives down and chases him. The Marines start chasing him. And this is where he spots Zoro finally, and he calls out to them, and Zoro and them are like, "No, don't bring them over here, you idiot!" But it's too late; they've seen them. So they're now all running in a clump. Um, and like the Marines are like shooting or like trying to get around him, and Smoker zooms up, and once again he says lines that make my heart beat, where he's like, "Straw Hat is mine, pull back," because he wants to be the one to bring him in. And I'm just like, huh, that's right. He is yours. Of course it is. However, this all gets interrupted when Ace shows up. And suddenly there is a fireball separating Smoker from his prey. Um, and Luffy's like, Ace, is that you? You ate a devil fruit? And we learn that Ace um, ate the Maramara no Mi. Write that one down, kids. It's also going to be very important later in the story. Um,
Hang on. I have a feeling, just a gut feeling. This is for more mature audiences. This podcast.
what do you mean?
Some of the things they just throwing it out there.
I mean, I always list these episodes as not for kids.
Uh,
I swear too
this
much
is
for that. even if I'm not being lewd, I just swear too much for me to be comfortable sharing this with kids. So we get this beautiful moment where Ace is like, Luffy, run, don't worry, I'll cover you here. And Luffy's like, okay. And so him and the crew run away. And we've discovered that Ace also has a Logia fruit, or Logia, whatever. In Japanese, I believe it would be pronounced Logia. Uh, like Smoker, basically. Smoker is smoke. Ace is fire. And Ace says a line how, smoke and fire, that's not going to work out, baby. Our devil fruits will just fight each other forever. No one will ever get the advantage. Because where there's smoke, there's fire. Like, there's just there neither one of us has an advantage in this, and we would just fight forever with no one ever gaining any ground with our devil fruits. Um and we see him like light up and go all cool fire and everything. And as the crew are running, they're like, Luffy, who is that guy? Is he an acquaintance of yours? Like, who is he? And Luffy ends the episode saying, of course I know him. He's my brother. Your brother? To be continued. How'd you like this
Lol.
episode? The introduction of uh
Oh, it's gone again.
no, I'm back. I really would like to know how this cord I bought a week ago and have used like 4 times is busted though.
Still gone.
I shouldn't be gone. I'm not gone on. I'm not gone in
Right.
OBS, Rudy.
We got to episode 94 before it completely cut out.
Hello.
Oh, there we go. There we go. You're
I'm
back.
I'm not gone in
Oh,
OBS, and that's the important thing at least.
I thought we weren't 95.
Yeah, we are in 95. Did you have any comments for 94 though?
Um, I guess the Fire Fist was cool. I don't really know. I just watch it and consume it. Don't
Well,
think too hard.
we haven't gotten to the Fire Fist yet. That's in 95. He doesn't use.
I saw the Fire Fist was the 94 because you said he used to,
No, he just uses
blade punch.
he uses just some fiery techniques. He doesn't use he can until episode 95.
Oh, fair enough.
But that is a huge important moment that we're going to get to, and it's a big standout moment that will be important for the series later. So let's dive into episode 95 because we've already been going for an hour, and I'm getting technical issues with this cord I just fucking bought for this new headset I just fucking bought, which is pissing me off. So let's skedoodle. I'm gonna try to stop you being a hand talker. Maybe that's exasperating the effects. So episode 95, the Straw Hats are running away, getting back towards their ship. Um, and Luffy is watching the fight because Smoker and Ace have just risen up to the air in the air as their elemental forms and are just like having sex. Like they are just spilling into each other. It is literally like a cyclone of fire and smoke that is filling the entire skyline. And we have to remember those are their actual bodies. Like that's not just them producing flame. That is literally their body pushing against each other. It's like the most erotic thing One Piece has ever done, at least at this point in the story. And we just saw Nami flash her tits like straight up, and this is way more erotic. Um, After a bit of this, Nami accidentally separates the group because they're running, and she's like, "All right, take the left path." But of course, Luffy is walking backwards, looking up at the fight, and doesn't pay attention to that, so he ends up going the right. They get to their ship and they begin setting up. Um, and to leave, and Chopper's like, we're leaving already, we just got here. And they're like, oh no, we have to sail up the river to get into the country because it's so big. We have to go over to this other city, we'll get there, and then we'll go to this place by land. And he's like, oh, okay. And they're all getting ready to leave, and then they of course all notice simultaneously that Luffy isn't there. um and Luffy is just like in a fucking alleyway at this point, hanging out. And then he's like, huh, I lost everyone again. And Ace just like pops out from a roof. Is like, you really are a fucking handful, aren't you? He's just like, you still moving at your own speed, eh, Luffy? And so the two brothers show up. They're great. They just talk and catch about like how long it's been. And we see them arm wrestle and like really going at it. Like Luffy is clearly really trying, and Ace is clearly really trying. And instead of there being a winner, they end up just destroying the barrel their arms are resting on through the sheer force. Um, which I'm gonna say is like a good indicator that Luffy is a lot stronger than he was at the start of this show, because we'll find out later a bit more about their relationship. Um, I find that little really great. Um, so Ace explains about being on Whitebeard's crew and working under Whitebeard, and he does try to recruit Luffy. I love that. He says he wants to make Whitebeard the king of the pirates, because he's the greatest pirate alive. And Luffy, you should come join us. And Luffy's like, nah, I'm good. So then we cut away from this scene, um, to Oda just again killing someone like flat out. Because remember, Smoker then captured Mr. 11 and had him tied to their mast, and all these Baroque Works soldiers are arriving, the billions, the people who get promoted to the numbered seats if there's an opening. And here's one of the numbered officers tied to a post, helpless, and they fucking execute him. Like they just kill him. Like Oda doesn't normally just kill people like this, even if they don't matter to the plot in like any way. Um so it always catches me a little off guard when he does that, because it's just like extra brutal for Oda. It's just not a thing he normally does. So they kill Mr. 11, and then they find out that Ace is here, and if they can catch Fire Fist Ace, that'll be amazing. So they chase off after him, and I don't know if you know this phrase, Rudy. It's pretty common in Canada. I don't know if in like the Europe lands they use it. But these men all have eyes bigger than their stomachs.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I hear that a lot.
Yeah, so that's how I would describe these men. Their eyes are bigger than their stomachs for sure. So Ace and Luffy, Ace is like, all right, let's get you back to your crew. He's like, where did you leave your ship? He's like, I don't know. He's like, Luffy, the captain should know where his ship is. He's like, it'll work out, because that's Luffy. Um, and Ace is basically just asking his brother, like, hey, what are your friends like? And it's this really cute scene where Luffy is just gushing about his friends to his brother, and you totally get the feel that they are brothers. Like, this is the older brother who's worried about his little brother and wants to know if the people he's running with are like not abusing him or taking advantage of him somehow. And it's great. So the Baroque work guys show up, and those guys, like Luffy and Ace, just give zero fucks. They attack them. There's some animation. There's a bit of scrap here and there. Um, they shoot Luffy a bunch, which bounces the bullets back and ends up cutting the big guy who ordered the hit on Mr. 11. It's like scrapes his cheek and we see some blood. So he draws this huge sword off his back and chases after Luffy. And Ace catches the sword. And now we've talked about hockey before in this show as something that isn't something that's really in the show yet, but it will be important to the show later. But Oda was setting hints of it around this point in the story. I mean, he's always done it in the story, but he at this point in the story he didn't know what it was yet. And Ace just runs up and catches the sword, and I just think that might have been a moment where he was using hockey. Um, and then this animation happens, and I hate it, where Luffy like bazookas this guy, and he like slides down the street, and then up the city, and then into the mountains. And there's just something about the animation in this moment that I just hate. Like it looks really cheap. It's just it doesn't make any sense. It's like the whole city is on a J arc. It just doesn't make any sense. Um, I really hate it. I've always hated that animation. It stood out in my head as just being really ugly, and it's never changed. Um, so Luffy gets to the water at that point, and then like the rest of them are still chasing them at this point. They haven't given up. And Ace is like, "Do you see your ship?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I see them." And like he doesn't even get a chance to tell Luffy like to don't worry about him, just to go. Like Luffy just goes. He doesn't give a shit, right? He moves at his own pace. So the crew see him with their binoculars. They're like, "Oh, there's Luffy. There's Luffy." It's like, "Yeah, that idiot has to be him." And they're about to go get him, and instead, of course, Luffy extends his arm to the ship and grabs a hold right in front of Sanji and Chopper, and rockets himself onto the ship, screaming "Tadaima," which basically means "I'm home." Like he just screams like "I'm back" as he hits Sanji and Chopper at like full speed. I really, I found that supremely funny. Um, that was fantastic. Um, so they're talking about Ace. They're like, "Oh, Ace was with you," and he's like, "Yep." He's like, "Well, did you leave him? Like, is he okay?" And Luffy talks about how strong Ace is, and he brings up that when they were kids and whenever they would fight or battle each other, Luffy never won once. And Usopp has this great line where he's like, "Well, I guess the big brother of a monster would be a stronger monster." And then Luffy's like, "But if we fought now, I'd win for sure." And he just starts laughing. And Zoro's like, "That's another baseless claim." At which point Ace like jumps onto the railing from the ocean below and startles Luffy so that he falls down. And Ace is just like, "Who's gonna lose now?" And Luffy just totally ignores him. He's like, "Look, Ace, it's my friends," um, which is fantastic. And he like has this good stick with the crew where again he says his very nice manners. He greets them properly, bows his head. He thanks them for looking after his brother so much and apologizes for all the trouble Luffy puts them through. And again, because he's just very nice when greeting people. And we'll find out why Ace has these weird like behavioral whiplash thing that he does later. So they're sailing away now, and Ace is there, and they're all having fun. And we see the fleet of Baroque workships chasing them, 5 of them. And Ace says, "Don't worry, I'll take care of them." And everyone's like, "What, really?" And he jumps off the ship and lands on like a surfboard, basically, with a sail, which is fueled by his fire fruit, basically. And he rockets towards the ships. He does this really cool thing where he jumps and pushes his surfboard under the water, flies over the 5 ships, literally trailing a body of flame because he can just fly, I guess. Um, his surfboard pops up on the other side. He lands in it, spins it around, and we see a very iconic pose. Don't forget this pose; it's very important. And he delivers the "he can" fire fist, and he just blows up 5 ships instantly. And Luffy's just laughing. He's like, "See, he's strong." So he gets back on their ship and they sail down the river. We cut back to Smoker, who's brooding because Luffy got away because Ace interfered. Um, and Tashiki is there, and Smoker brings up that they have Vivi, the missing princess of Alabasta, that he saw her and he knows they have her. And Tashiki's like, "What, they kidnapped her?" And he's like, "No, it looks more like she's working with them." And he's just like, "This shit is going down. I don't know what the fuck is going down on this island, but shit is about to happen." And he knows Luffy is going to fight Crocodile because Luffy mentioned it while they were running. Because Smoker asked him, like, "What are you doing here? Like, why are you in this country?" And Luffy's like, "I'm gonna beat up Crocodile. Leave me alone." Because Luffy doesn't lie, um, which is fantastic. So they decide they're going to go where Crocodile is because they know if they go where Crocodile is, Luffy will show up, which is right. It's very accurate. So we come back to the ship and the boys are celebrating and drinking, and Luffy tries to convince Ace to join his crew, but of course he doesn't do it. And they ask him about what he's doing here, and he explains that he's hunting Blackbeard. And it gets brought up that Blackbeard was the pirate who attacked Drum, and we finally get more exposition about Blackbeard. He was a member of the Whitebeard Pirates, but he committed what Ace calls the worst sin a pirate can do. He killed one of his crewmates and fled the ship. So Ace is trying to hunt him down to avenge their crewmate because he broke the laws of the ship. He killed a crewmate. He killed his nakama and fled. Um, and they find out that they're heading to the same place, so they're going to travel together for a little while, and that's the end of the episode.
Nice.
How'd you like this episode? How'd you like this episode block? We're almost at episode 100. It's been a long journey. I hope you've been enjoying One Piece as much as I have.
I think throughout episodes 94 and 95, Ace was just focused. The Ace was just cool.
He,
I liked just his fire abilities.
yeah, I mean, fire abilities are kind of cool. Pun
Hmm.
intended.
Oh,
Uh, we would, I, his abilities are cool, and his abilities are like the most pure fire abilities. But we will see like 8 people over the course of this show with like fire devil fruit abilities. Well, no, in the show it might be like 4, but there are also 4 in movies. Oda Oda really likes diving back into fire fruit with slightly different specifics. A lot.
yeah.
A lot. It's like a really common power in One Piece that people can just do weird things with heat. But yeah, no, these introductions to Ace are great. He's gonna stick around. We are, I think we are about to hit a few episodes of filler. I'm not sure. There are some fillery bits to this part of Alabasta while Ace is with the party, which is annoying. It's like 2 or 3 episodes, and it does killed the pacing a little bit because the filler characters, like the story around the filler characters, just isn't as good as the canon story stuff that we're dealing with right now. So it just kind of stands out as being meh. But we're almost on episode 100. I think the Alabasta arc ends by episode 120, so we're like getting there. Like this whole saga, the Baroque Works saga, is like approaching its end. We are moving into the end game for the second arc of One Piece, and then we get to start the third arc. Yay!
Oh god, what would that be?
After Alabasta,
Hmm.
it is Skypiea. He said confidently,
Okay.
which is exciting. It's our first arc with Robin, and it's a really interesting arc, full of different like what's the word when they're not an arc? What are arcs made of?
Hmm.
Noriko got mad at me one time because I kept changing the words back and forth. Now I can't even remember what the other word is. Saga. Okay, sorry. The saga is the big word. We are about to enter the Skypiea saga, and there are multiple arcs in the Skypiea saga, including at the end of the Skypiea saga. Get excited for this, Rudy. The best filler arc in any anime ever.
Oh god.
Reportedly so popular that Oda has made the characters from that filler arc canon in the manga. They have come back in later One Piece because it is so beloved by the fans. This anime only arc, which we are still a ways away, was so popular. Oda had to include those characters in the actual story, which is super interesting. Like it's very interesting. I'm curious to see how you'll like it, but we're a ways away from that. I'd rather you focus on liking episodes 96 to 100. And that's going to be it for us today. We've been going for like an hour and 20 minutes. I only have 20 minutes before I have to go to bed, and I have to fight with this damn headset to figure out why this cord isn't working. Thank you for being with me as always, Rudy. I can't wait to watch the next 5 episodes with you. And everyone watching, have a great One Piece, everybody. Bye bye. Rudy, say goodbye.
Oh, I thought I said goodbye already. Goodbye.
Bye.